We do it in a nice way, right? Why am I explaining this? Why this is important for us to understand? If we're calling someone over for just samosas and chai, or maybe biryani, we actually call them with, lots of compassion, lots of patience, love, and with, if we're calling a human being to come have chai or tea, how should we call someone to Allah? Why am I saying this, brothers and sisters? How many of you here watch Dawah online? Okay, how many of you watch like Hyde Park? Okay, Hyde Park is a park in UK that people go and they discuss anything for people that don't know. They'll talk about health, weather, politics. They'll talk about human rights, animal rights, anything. Anything goes. So obviously as Muslims are going there to speak about Islam. And I'm not picking on Hyde Park. I'm just saying generally, when we see the dawah there, or anywhere actually, right? What do we see in the dawah? When we focus on the du'ats that are online, right? What do we find? We find debates, right? We find arguments. So what I'm trying to share with you, brothers and sisters, that as much as we think that is dawah, that is not dawah. Now I'm not saying all of those brothers are wrong and the way they're doing it is incorrect. That's not what I'm making that claim. There is a time and a place for that to happen for certain people. But what's happening is, because we're watching these sound bites, means they're like, let's say someone, like if I sat with some brother for 3 hours and I gave him dawah for whatever reason, right? We discussed. And let's say something was being recorded. What would usually happen is the part that's the most juicy is we'll chop it up and we'll put it online. Because that's what, for some reason, gets views. So what's happening is, we only see that 1 second clip or 1 minute clip. We don't realize that these brothers are maybe doing great dawah outside of that. But because we only watch that part, we think, as the Muslim Ummah, that that is what dawah is. So why did we put this slide up first? Is because what we want to share with people, that is not dawah. And that is not what we want to teach you guys how to give dawah. We want to teach you is not to give dawah that way. That's the point. I hope that makes sense to you. So when we are saying is to invite, this is what we mean with hikmah, with wisdom, with good instructions. And we'll discuss that a little later. But here's what the point we want to take away. When we're talking about dawah is not only to just invite, is to enjoin good and to forbid evil. So what is good, brothers and sisters? What is good? Working? It's working. What is good? Yes, sister. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Yes. Yeah. So let's say, I'm always trying to install this on the brothers. So alhamdulillah, we have about, at this moment, I think about 150 to 200 volunteers across Canada that are giving dawah with us. And one of the things we've started to do since last year is to get all of the da'is to become students of knowledge. Okay? If you're giving dawah, you must be learning Islam. Okay? So one of the things we're always trying to teach the du'ats is when we're giving dawah, yes, you want to use your intellect and logic in some places, but you have to keep going back to Quran and Sunnah. You have to keep going back to the Prophet ﷺ. You have to keep going back to what he taught the companions and how he taught to the next 2 generations, right? How they were taught about Islam. This is our universal truth that never changes, okay? And that's the point we're trying to make. So when we're saying good, it has to come from what Islam is saying good. And what is this? Everything in Islam is good. Even if we don't understand it, it still has good in it. So when we say enjoin good, it's enjoining good through Islam. And forbid evil, anything that goes against Islam is evil. Anything. Okay? So that's the point. Make sense? Excellent. Now, the first thing I want you to kind of look at, without getting into like it says Britain and all this other stuff, just the overall concept. What do you guys see in these slides? What do you guys see here? Propaganda, negativity. What else do we see here? Mockery of Islam. What else do we see? Islamophobia. Good. Now, here's my humble advice, brothers and sisters. Here's a saying that I don't know where I got it from, but I really like it, so I kind of borrowed it. Somebody said, if you're not telling your story, know that someone else is telling your story. And you're not going to like it. So here's what I'm saying. There are people out there that are spokesmen for Islam, that are talking about Islam. Either they're not Muslim, or they have a really twisted understanding of what Islam is. Okay? So what I'm trying to share with you, brothers and sisters, if you're not sharing the message of Islam with people, someone else is sharing the message. So don't think that they're not hearing about Islam. They're hearing about Islam, but they're not hearing it from you. They're not hearing from authentic sources. So they're coming up with Islam with whatever they watch on TV, whatever they get from social media, whatever one understanding they want to come up with. Like I was watching this one Christian pastor or someone. He was speaking to an audience of I think 500 patrons in his church, explaining Islam to Christians. And I was like, well, who made him an authority? Like if I went to a church and I opened up, and I said, let me explain everything about the Bible for you. Let me explain what the Bible is saying. Let me tell you what the church fathers said. Let me tell you, how the Trinity formulated. Let me tell you what your truths are. Are they going to accept my view? No. They're going to, who are you? So this is what I'm trying to explain. So we should stay in our lane, especially non-Muslims. If they want to learn about Islam, at least they should come to someone who's qualified, who understands Islam, or at least start asking Muslims. So that's why we want to educate Muslims how to share the message of Islam. Okay? Otherwise, this is what we're going to get. And I know that this community has dealt with some challenges, just like any other community. There's challenges that happen in other communities like Toronto. There was an incident that took place in Hamilton. So we see over and over that people have misunderstanding of Islam. Okay? And that's why, because we're not actually telling people what Islam is. Okay? So here's what I'm trying to say. There's something called reactive and there's something called proactive. You guys know the difference? So what's the difference? Yes, brother. Excellent. I believe the Muslim Ummah is reactive. It's not proactive. I believe we wait until something goes wrong and then we go put out the fire. But we don't take the precautions to pre-think that something can go wrong. We should be out there explaining to people. When something goes wrong is when we Muslims wake up. Okay? This is the challenge. Yes, sister? Yeah. Yeah, the deen is proactive. Excellent. Jazakallah khair. Yeah, the deen is perfect. But as Muslims, the ones who follow the deens, we sometimes reactive. Excellent. That's all I was trying to say, yeah? So why am I explaining that? When we look at, how many of you studied the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ? Inshallah, many of you here. Allahu Akbar, it's a good sign. So here's a question. Do you guys know the story of Hudaybiyah? What happened in Hudaybiyah? There was a treaty that was being signed, right? Yes? In that treaty, when it was being signed, who was it favoring, the Muslims or the non-Muslims? The non-Muslims. What did the Sahabas think of that treaty? They said it was unfair, right? What ayats Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down? Surah Al-Fatah. What does that mean in English? The victory. But the Sahabas found that to be as losing. But Allah said, oh, this is a victory. Why? Why is Allah saying it's a victory? But the Sahaba